Dr. Judith Clark, and I am a chartered psychologist and workplace health and wellbeing strategist. And I've worked in the world of health and wellbeing for about 20 years now. So my kind of corporate health and wellbeing experience is sort of covers the last decade or so. But prior to that, I worked as a personal trainer. I worked in community health, so going into schools and workplaces and talking about healthy eating, exercise, all that good stuff. But more recently, I have worked as head of health and wellbeing at the Royal Mail. I was director of health and wellbeing at Mace. And now I run my own business called the Wellbeing Exchange. I'm really interested in strategic well-being. So as much as I enjoy talking about health behaviours and helping people make changes to their lifestyles, I'm really interested in how organisations can put in place sustainable approaches to support their people and their bottom line. So I worked within the construction sector for a few years, and obviously as part of that met with lots of different construction companies, met with members of our supply chain, met with clients, and financial well-being is a real challenge. Well, we know mental ill health is a real challenge in the industry. The suicide rates are still high, but the construction sector as a whole are really focusing on things that they can do to improve mental well-being. And one of those is around financial education. If you think for some of the supply chain organizations where individuals are paid hour by hour, or they might be paid wall by wall or task by task, that not having necessarily knowing where your next day of work is coming from, that is inherently stressful. Well, you're away from your family and friends, but do you have access to good nutrition, to exercise, all the kind of other health and well-being elements that lead to a good life? Do you have access to them? Maybe not. Does the workplace or the site that you're working on, does it have support in terms of your mental well-being? Does it have a decent canteen? What does it look like? Are the facilities okay? So people working with those kind of day-to-day challenges, it's perhaps inherently stressful. And if people aren't paid on time, again, supply chain, as I mentioned earlier, with smaller companies not being paid on time, it's a huge issue for people if you don't have the cash flow. So I think the lack of certainty about where money is coming from, and that's why financial well-being is such an important area to focus on. I mean, the construction sector is infinitely safer than it once was, and all the big contractors have got really good safety programs. But if fatigue is a challenge for people, so if you're stressed because of your financial circumstances, your living circumstances, relationships, all of those kind of personal factors, of course it could have an impact on your safety and the safety of others around you through mistakes. So putting in place support or advice or education around financial well-being for people in the construction sector, I think is really important, because it's part of prevention, isn't it? It's about, if you can get someone, if they didn't know about the money advice service, for example, they didn't know about debt consolidation or some of these topics, by offering education in those areas, it might be like a bit of a relief. They might think, okay, well, actually there is something I can do about this, or feeling that someone they can talk to about it, because it's a bit of it's a macho industry still, and we talk about the challenges of people wanting to open up and talk about mental health. Talking about financial health, it's like, ooh, people don't necessarily want to go there. On the construction sites, there are many barriers in place, I think, in having those conversations. But some construction companies are starting to take this area really seriously as part of their approach to supporting the mental well-being of their employees. It's about not just those big construction companies and those big contractors. What about the small and medium-sized companies as well? And what about the people in the supply chain? I think the big contractors have got huge responsibility or opportunity perhaps, to guide those working in their supply chains and offer education and support around this. I think clients have got a big opportunity in terms of promoting wellbeing generally in the companies, in their supply chains. So the main contractors, they are part of supply chains, and if they, through the procurement process, are required to put in place provision around wellbeing, and not just the kind of tertiary support element of wellbeing, but some of that primary prevention and the education, the kind of protections for employees, if that is kind of higher up in the chain, then I think it's more likely to get down to the smaller companies, and it needs to be more than a tick box. So I think what's really positive at the moment, when you're looking at ESG and sustainability guidelines, many organisations are now putting wellbeing as part of that within their procurement processes. But it's moving away from just tick, we've got a wellbeing programme, tick, actually what constitutes that? So what's in that? What are you doing? And as part of that programme, and as maybe part of the sort of the site induction, or the notice boards and things around different projects, you have a certain amount of advice and support and leaflets and things on different topics, and financial wellbeing would be one of them. I think it's challenging because there are so many different topics and so many areas that are important, that for the main contractor or for the client on a particular project, you've got so many different places saying, right, we want to talk about this, we want to talk about this, we want to talk about this, and there's only so many things that you can effectively communicate. But if you're looking at wellbeing holistically, financial wellbeing absolutely must be a part of that. So I think it needs to start with the client and the main contractors, and then drip down to the other supply chain companies. If we want to reach as many people as possible, it might be simply about having some of those signposting educational tools. Fantastic if you can go further than that, absolutely. But if that's the way of reaching as many people as possible, good quality educational tools that can be cascaded out across a lot of people is a great place to start.